All right, we back. So today I want to talk about gambling addiction. I want to talk more about it. I talked about it last week on a video involving sports betting. We talked about DraftKings, we talked about FanDuel and all of that stuff and how it's really taken over a lot of people's lives. It's really corrupting families. It's becoming something of an unbearable thing in many, many parts of our country. And this is just a start. There are three ways that you can start overcoming addictions right now. Three ways. And believe me, these are three very proven ways because these ways I installed in my life. There's been various scenarios in which I had a vice in my life that was killing me. It wasn't gambling, it was something else. And I instituted a few of these steps, and I did not make these steps up. And one of them comes directly from the Bible, and it will help anybody who's trying to overcome addiction. So, St. Bonaventure had this report about gambling online, and it says here 15% of all Americans, including 22% of young men and 30% of avid fans, know someone who has or had a problem with online sports betting. Of those who place bets with an online sports book, 37% have felt bad or ashamed after losing a bet. 38% have felt that they bet more than they should have. 19% have lied to someone about the extent of their betting, and 18% have bet and lost money that was meant for meeting their financial obligations. By 65 to 23%, Americans agree that online sports betting will end up creating compulsive gamblers that will cause pain to them and their families. So, right there is a study by a university that is showing you how the cracks are being laid in all these families when it comes to people who are compulsively gambling their money away. Most people don't have the discretionary funds to be gambling on levels that some of these addicts are gambling on. And then, as any other addiction works, it then lays out and it creates problems. People start stealing, people start leveraging their homes, people start losing their lives, all because you're trying to put money on a game. And this right here sums up the problem. This study. There's so many percentages here of people who they betted more than they should have. They know somebody who's struggling with it. It's going to become an epidemic. It already is an epidemic and it's getting even worse. So with that said, you may know an addict. You may know somebody who is struggling with gambling, or you may be struggling with it yourself. Now, if you're like anybody else who thinks that they're not an addict, who may be in full blown addiction of something, you're probably thinking to yourself, no, I'm not. I just bet a little bit here, I bet a little bit there. It's no big deal. Well, just like anybody else, let me go through some signs. Here are some warning signs that you may have a problem with gambling. Let's see here. Spending more money than intended on gambling. Gambling for longer periods of time than intended. Getting into serious financial trouble because of gambling. Lying to cover up gambling. Using gambling to escape personal problems and distressing feelings. Thinking about gambling all the time. Being unable to set limits. Gambling in spite of losing more than can be afforded. Problems paying bills because of gambling losses. Not paying bills to cover gambling losses. Gambling to cover losses. Destroying families and relationships because of gambling. Borrowing or stealing money from family, friends, or employers to keep on gambling. Experiencing poor job performance or losing a job because of gambling. And that came from mdproblemgambling.com, the warning signs. Do you see yourself in there? Or do you know a loved one that fits a lot of those areas? And if we want to talk about another addiction, you could take the gambling out and put in anything else: alcohol, drinking, drug use, whatever. But as you see here, here is signs that a person is struggling with gambling. And one of the worst things about gambling is it affects so many people around you, especially if you got kids, especially if the person has kids, or if the person is the sole breadwinner of the house, it puts everyone in jeopardy, everyone in peril. I mean, I know stories of people who grew up with a father or a mother who was addicted to gambling and how they couldn't keep the lights on, or they had to go to the food pantry at the church to get more food because the paychecks wasn't sustaining the addiction that was happening at the casinos. The biggest problem with the sports betting is it is being delivered to your phone and the access is just too close to the person's hands. And it's like anything else. When it's real close and it's accessible, it makes it harder to say no. So here we go. We're going to roll out 3 ways to stop gambling today. If you want to stop online sports betting, you want to stop gambling in general, here are 3 ways to stop gambling today. Now, I'm not a gambling addict, but I understand addiction. I'm not saying that these are just the 3 ways. There are more ways, but I'm going to give you 3 to get started on today. The first way to stop online gambling is realize you have a problem. Realize you have a problem. One of the first things you need to do when it comes to being addicted is to realize that you are an addict. Now, I remember a story of a guy I knew that was in the throes of alcohol addiction, and he got pulled over by the cops and he got handcuffed and tested, was 2 times over the legal limit. And so when he had to start going to all these different community meetings and he had to start going to these rehabilitation sessions, he sat down with this man and the man looked at him and was like, "You're an alcoholic, ain't you?" And the guy was like, "No, I'm not an alcoholic. I just got caught doing something. I had a bad night." He said, "No, you're an alcoholic." He's like, "No, I'm not." And then he just starts running down a list just like I did. He's like, "Have you ever missed a meeting because you wanted to drink? Have you ever lost a relationship because you were too drunk and did something stupid?" Just running it down. And after a while, the guy realized, oh, you know what? If all of that, like I've done all those things, I am an addict. So at that point, when this guy admits he's an addict, at that point, then it's from there you can start the restoration process. But even the big book in Alcoholics Anonymous says, in order for a program of recovery to work, one has to be honest with himself. If he cannot be honest with himself, the program will never work. So at this point, if you're a gambling addict, you have to recognize that you are one. Stop with the excuses. Stop excusing everything. Stop blaming all your problems on other people. Stop walking around thinking that life's not fair. You've made these decisions. These decisions have been made on the foundation of an addiction that you cannot control. And with that, one must say to himself, I am sick, I am addicted, and I need help. And once you can say that to yourself, that's when the road to recovery starts. So the first one, realize that you have a problem. Say it out loud. Say it to others. I have a problem. One of the worst ways a person can stay enslaved is to walk around thinking that they are free when they're in chains. But when you recognize the chains that are on your wrists, the chains that are on your legs, the chains that are binding you down, then you can start figuring out what are the ways that I can free myself. So number 2 of the ways to stop sports gambling today. And this is going to come from the Bible. The second way is to create friction between you and the vice. Create friction between you and the vice. Now, we're going to break that down real quick, and we're going to go to a biblical scripture that really hones in on this. And the scripture is Matthew 5:27-30. So let's go there. New Living Translation. You know I like that because I don't want to mess around with the wordplay, at least not today. Now, some background on Matthew 5. This is a portion of a sermon being given by Jesus Christ. It's called the Sermon on the Mount. Like I tell you before, it's the best sermon in the Bible. with the sermon from Peter being a far second. But it's the best sermon in the Bible, and inside of it, he's teaching people really what God intends for people who want to live a godly life. And he gets to this part about adultery. Now, I know you're asking the question, Chris, I thought this was a video about gambling and online sports betting. It is, but inside of the directions that he gives about adultery is very much an important directive that can be utilized in any kind of parts in which a person has some type of addiction that they're trying to break free from. All right, just keep with me and we'll walk through it. Verse 27, it says this: "You have heard that the commandment says you must not commit adultery. But I say, anyone who even looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart." So right away, he starts talking about the adultery piece. He says, hey, there is a law in the Jewish laws that says you cannot commit adultery. But he says committing adultery goes further than just actually having sex with another person that's not your wife or not your husband. But it goes further in what happens in the mind. So in the mind, it says, even if you look at a woman lustfully, it's just as much adultery as actually having sex with her, even though it's not the same, but it's all about the person's mindset and their heart condition. So he says, your heart is committing adultery when you just look at a woman with lust. Okay, so that's one thing. That's another video for another day. But he gives a prescription as to how you can stop with the lustful looks of other women. And this prescription can be utilized when you're trying to stop anything which is bad for you. All right, and we're going to go back to the second way about creating the friction between you and the vice. So check this out. Verse 29. So if your eye, even your good eye, causes you to lust, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your hand, even your stronger hand, causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And don't get caught too far up with like the examples he uses. But check this out. So when you think about it, if you're looking at a person with lust, it's your eye gate that's causing the issue. Okay. So Jesus says it's better for you to get rid of the thing that's causing you the issue, that's causing you to sin, than for you just to keep on degrading into sin. So if your eyes are causing you sin, gouge them out. Now, I'm not telling you to gouge out your eyes, okay? But the important part here is whatever is the thing that's in your life that's causing you to sin, it might be a good idea to get rid of it. So just think about this. If you're a gambling addict, and the thing that's causing you to sin is sports betting on your phone or on the computer, it might be very much advantageous to your sobriety if you're trying to kick the habit to add friction between you and the phone, you and the computer. How do you add friction to it? Well, let's just start with the phone first, because I think most people be betting on phones, okay? Maybe you shouldn't have a smartphone. Maybe it's time to go grab that flip phone. I think they even sell flip phones now, where you just text and you call. You text and you call. If you get a flip phone instead of the, Samsung S24 or the iPhone Max 16 or whatever, then you take away at least the ease to operate in the addiction. Now, in order for you to bet, you're going to have to go down to the local casino house and make sports bets. And you may live in a city that's far away from these places. You may have to drive an hour. And so when you put all that friction in, the friction of getting in the car, the friction of driving an hour, the friction of going into a seedy place, or the friction of going into any place, you're now putting a lot of obstacles for you to actually obtain the vice, obtain the addiction, and that will help you refrain because it's making it harder for you to even get onto it. One of the bigger problems about online sports betting is it's too freaking easy. And when the addiction is easy to adhere to, then it's hard to kick. But if you put the friction in, look, you got a problem betting online? Maybe you need some software that shuts down all betting sites. That shuts them down on your computer. Software that shuts down all betting sites on your phone. Or you just need a flip phone. Like these, I know it sounds childish, like, oh, you treat me like a child. I can be responsible with the phone, but you're not responsible. We are not responsible with what we have. So if we trying to kick a habit, we have to get out of it. I mean, here's a good example. If you're an alcoholic, or if I'm an alcoholic, should I be just hanging out in the bar? I mean, later on, when you have really got your habit under control, you can. But when in a freely fresh alcoholic who's in remission or who's trying to be sober goes into a bar, you immediately get triggered. The smell of the bar can trigger an alcoholic. The whiskey bottles and the beer bottles can be triggers. So you would like to keep yourself out of places that trigger you. You know, a person who is battling with lust should not walk into a strip club. I mean, you talk about triggers galore. A person who's battling with being addicted to food or addicted to sugar, well, the real battle is not at home. The battle is at the grocery store. If you just keep the Oreos in aisle C and don't bring them home to put them in your pantry, then you won't have a problem looking for Oreos because the Oreos won't be there. Mr. Power is not a friend of ours. You know Mr. Power? Mr. Will Power? Like, don't even go on, like, stay on the bench. Don't even play the game. The game is set to lose. So, you know, the battle for a food addict is at the grocery store. It's not in the pantry. Because once it's in the pantry, it's good as eating. Put as much friction as you can between you and the vice. And that's kind of what the scripture is saying, is like, look, get rid of the mechanisms that's calling you to sin. Get rid of the mechanisms that's causing you to stay in addiction. You know, you might have some friends that are keeping you in addictions. You know, some friends who want to talk about gambling, some friends who want to go down the parlays. You know, you may have to tell that person to chill or get lost for a little bit. You trying to get better. I'm just thinking that is a good scripture here, biblically sound scripture that tells you, hey, you know, put some friction between you and that vice. It will help you. Now, before I give you point number 3, if you've gotten this far in the video, you know what to do, right? Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell as well. And for people who want to comment on this video, tell me about the things you're struggling with. Like give me stories about maybe the people you know that may have issues with the gambling addiction. And tell me about how maybe you'll utilize these points to help that person recover from a very, very detrimental scenario and situation. And tell me about if you ever went through things that, you know, give us a story. You know, we can help each other. And that really ties in to the third point. The third point. Find a community to support your journey. The third point. Find a community to support your journey. We can't do this alone. I mean, most things are not done alone. Most things are done in community. If you're trying to kick a habit, it's hard to just fight it by yourself. Sometimes you need a community to be able to kick a habit. I'm sure there's a Gamblers Anonymous in every big city, and there's Gamblers Anonymous in many towns. And those are communities that are built to help people recover from gambling addiction. And it's probably gotten bigger and bigger ever since FanDuel and DraftKings came out. But they are there as a community. And what does a community do? A community supports your efforts towards sobriety. A community helps keep you accountable even when you're struggling. A community will come alongside of you and give you the truths that you need. But the one good thing about communities such as Gamblers Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, is it's full of people who are also walking through their sobriety path away from the addiction. And even in the big book, which is the Alcoholics Anonymous book, they call it the big book, it talks about how the best help that an addict can have is to be talked to and helped by another addict of the same addiction. And in chapter 7, which is entitled Working with Others in the big book, here's what it says. Carry this message to other alcoholics. What message? The message of sobriety, the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. You can help when no one else can. Yeah, see, another alcoholic can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill. Right there in your face, it says that the alcoholic can help the other alcoholic when nobody else can help. And that goes with the gamblers too. So gamblers who are in sobriety can help others. But if you are in an addiction of gambling, you have to find a community to help you. I have a story about a friend of mine, and this is another friend, who was literally overdosing in the hospital bed with nothing but death on the horizon, which it was a miracle that he was even shocked back to life, because he was in a coma and he woke up. And what he woke up to was some family, but he also woke up to 2 people from Alcoholics Anonymous that was willing to 12-step him. What's 12-step? 12-step is basically to start a person through the program even when they may not be ready, but just to offer the solution of hope to a person right at the precipice of death. And he woke up to these 2 people who talked to him, who loved him through things, who, and as time went on, who went to meetings with him, who sponsored him, who talked about sobriety, who he called in the middle of the night when he was getting triggered and wanted to relapse. And what's crazy is a lot of these rooms are filled with people who are geniuses. It's just that they have been wasting their life away through addiction, and it has squelched their ingenuity, their ambition, their creativity, and their interests. But this man here, after he got sober, he stayed sober for years, and he's still sober to this day. But not only is he sober, he runs other counseling business. I mean, this man has multiple businesses that are counseling businesses that help people kick drugs and alcohol and live sober lives. I mean, he's gotten awards for being an entrepreneur within the city. Like, think about this. This man was on his deathbed, and now he's walking around a business owner, entrepreneur, helping others the same way he was helped, given the gift of life the same way he was given it. And that's spectacular. So through that 12-step on that bed, in a hospital bed that day, other people, because now he's opening all these places, other people are also being saved from addictions that are destroying lives every day. So number 1, realize you have a problem. Number 2, put some blockades, between you and the vice. Put some friction there. And number 3, plug into a community that can help you walk away from the addiction. I understand what happens when people are fully in their addictive vices and they can't get out of it. And so I'm just pleading, like, if you know somebody who's in gambling addiction, if you know somebody who is struggling with it, or if you are struggling with it, please start with just calling the hotline. It's right here. Start there. Seek some help. It's never too late to turn around, even though things may be as bad as they can be. I'm telling you, you can always, always walk away. Like I said, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell as well. You'll be notified every time I drop a video. There's a video here. It should be awesome. You should check it out. With all that, I love you all. Way and word out.